stop overestimating others' intelligence and underestimating your own. There are leaders who appear very confident. Sometimes we put them on that pedestal, but what can happen is those leaders can turn into brilliant jerks who never get good feedback. People are too scared to share ideas or feedback or insights with them, so those leaders are going along thinking everything's working when it's not.
That's Kelli Thompson. She's an award-winning leadership and executive coach, keynote speaker, and author who's spent over 2 decades helping leaders lead with more clarity and confidence through her no BS, but highly compassionate approach. In her book, Closing the Confidence Gap, Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck, she shares what it takes to overcome burnout and how to unleash your full potential at work. So you'll learn 1, why over-admiring your coworkers could be undermining your progress. 2, the key to sustainable confidence. And 3, how to identify and trust your genius zone. And if you want a quick summary write-up of the actionable takeaways Kelli shares here, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter found at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Kelli. Kelli, welcome.
Good to see you again.
You too, you too. Well, you've been up to a lot of fun, including a TEDx talk that has a very impressive like ratio. I'm such a dork. I notice these things. How idolizing coworkers can hold you back. Tell us, how did this even come up as a thing to talk about?
You know, it's interesting. So fun fact for all of you wanting to do TEDx talks, they renamed it that. Okay, but we'll come full circle. So here's how it came up is I was writing my book, Closing the Confidence Gap. And so I was just thinking about times in my life that stood out to me in corporate where I just really lacked confidence. And so I went kind of back to this scene when I had worked at this company for 10 years. I had been, kind of promoted. I was a, middle level leader. I was a director level. And I remember sitting in one of these like all day strategy meetings you get stuck in. And it was after lunch and like the conversation was going round and round. I was so annoyed. We were hearing from the same voices over and over again. And I just remember getting a bathroom break and thinking to myself, I'm like, ugh, why am I so annoyed? And thinking to myself, oh, it's because we're just literally hearing from the same people over and over again. And I'm like, oh, they're male voices because I worked in the male-dominated field of financial services. So I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, well, these women should speak up, because the room was split 50-50. And it's almost as if I heard this voice. It's like, well, you could be the one to speak up because I hadn't said anything all day. And it just occurred to me, I was like, well, I can't speak up because what if I speak up and I sound silly? I can't speak up because what if I don't have enough experience? I can't speak up because I need to go back and make sure that I know exactly what I'm talking about, but first. And what I realized is the reason I wasn't speaking up is because I was really intimidated by some of the more senior leaders in the room. I call them the hippos, the highest paid person's opinion. And looking back now, I didn't have a name for it then, but I had these folks on a pedestal thinking that because they had a higher title than me or more charisma than me or maybe more experience than me, then they must know best. And so all these things that they're saying, they must be right. There's no room for my expertise or opinion. That example got maybe like a paragraph in my book. But as I would go out and people would read my book or we would talk about this concept, people were like, oh my gosh, me too. And so then over the course of the years, when I thought about what would my TED Talk be on, that's how this pedestal problem came to life, is it just was this recurring problem that I didn't think a lot of because it was just an example of my life that ended up being, oh, wow, I share this problem too, where I'm giving and defaulting to other people instead of trusting my own ideas, my own instincts, my own intuition. And now I see people even do it with ChatGPT. They're trusting AI over their own ideas or their own insights. And so I think there's no room for them. So that's how this whole idea came full circle. I call it the pedestal problem. TEDx said idolizing your coworkers. It's all kind of the same thing.
Well, it's funny because, ChatGPT is far worse than someone you admire in terms of the quality of its opinions.
Yes.
In most domains.
In most domains, but
yeah.
You know what? It sounds so right, though. It sounds so sure of itself.
It sounds very convincing. But I don't know how many times it's told me the direct opposite of the truth. Well, okay, my favorite story here is, I remember I was Google searching, because our kids are at a school, and I was wondering, do we have school today on, was it Veterans Day or President's Day? It was one of those Monday holidays, and it was ambiguous. And I don't know where the heck our calendar went. It fell off the fridge, and a 3-year-old probably has it under the fridge at this point. So I just Googled it and I thought, okay, well, surely, and it gave me the Google AI summary. And I thought, okay, well, you're just scraping the top results anyway, so I could probably trust this. And it said, yeah, school's canceled today. It was like for the holidays. Like, okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. And it was dead wrong. And I was like, oh, this isn't even a difficult one. Like the answer is, I could have clicked the first result. And so, and there have been many little instances of being told the direct wrong thing by AI and just like manufacturing nonsense. Like, oh yeah, that restaurant's been closed since June 2024. It's like, no, it never existed in the first place, dude. Come on. And you're Gemini, according to Ella Marina. You're supposed to be the best right now. So rant complete. Don't put AI on a pedestal for sure. And even putting human beings on a pedestal has problems. Point taken. So tell us, is it so wrong to admire and appreciate and elevate the opinions of those who are excellent in their fields, Kelli?
Yeah, that is the underlying question, right? I think it's, when is it okay to admire people, to take their advice, to follow their advice? And at what point should you notice, am I over rotating on listening to everything Pete says, right? And following all of his advice, and I've stopped trusting myself? And I think that there's some really good questions you can ask yourself to help you discern, am I just blindly following someone? Or am I a novice in something and I should be taking helpful advice? And I think that that is actually the first question that you can ask yourself is, how much do I know about this topic? I'm listening to someone, I'm learning, this person has advice for me. So when we think about when we're young in our careers, let's just talk about being in our early 20s. It's not uncommon to take a lot of advice about your career. I know I did. And sometimes that advice was good. Sometimes that advice was, I should talk to this person this way, or maybe I should try this career, or I should try this job. When I was early in my career and I was new, I think it was helpful at some point to take their advice. Did I do some things that maybe I shouldn't have done because I admired the person? Yeah, I did. And also, isn't that part of being 26 years old and being brand new in your career? Sometimes you just have to try some things, right? But at some point, I think that there's a turning point where you start to realize, oh, you know what? They're just guessing too. They're just figuring it out too. And even though they might be in the corner office with a nice title and probably a pretty nice salary, it doesn't always mean they know what's right for me. And so some of the things that I had to learn early on was to ask more discerning questions like, is the career advice they're giving me aligned with my values? Is this advice going to move me closer to the person that I want to become, right? Or does it just have like some sort of shiny title on it? Does their recommendations, does it give me energy? Is it aligned with my best skills and talents? And so those are some of those discerning questions you can start to ask yourself to say, hey, I know they have an opinion, but is that right for me? And then we can turn and say, what do I want to do? What's aligned with my skills? What gets me excited? What aligns with my values? What do I want to learn? And it's not about right or wrong or their advice and my advice. There's no magic ratio. I think it's all about, am I just slowing down enough to check in with myself and ask me, is this what I want to do? And what do I think I should do? Maybe it's a blend of the two. Maybe it's one or the other, but slowing down and checking in first, I think becomes really important before we just, my leader said I should do this and that's where I should go.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's an interesting natural tendency, or at least I'm guilty of it, is that I assume because someone has produced an impressive result, has a great title, or has achieved tremendous success in any domain, I think, well, they must be a genius or they must have all the answers. Clearly, they know what they're doing. And so often the particulars of how they got somewhere, they involve a healthy bit of luck. And I think specifically in entrepreneurial spaces, it seems like the magic of product market fit is just so huge. And so if you happen to have the thing that turns out everybody wanted this thing and we didn't know it till I made it. Lucky me. It's often not a super repeatable process by which you create any tremendous result in terms of, hey, a couple of things lined up and I was right there. And yet we can say, okay, well, whatever they say about this matter must be gospel truth and I should internalize it because what do I know?
Yeah, that's actually a really wonderful example. I often joke that entrepreneurs giving advice about helping other entrepreneurs build their business is like sharing my winning lottery numbers. It worked for me. So you should all play these numbers. And I think we see that a lot. It's like, hey, I built this Six-figure community, you should too. I built this podcast system, you should too. I built this business, here's how you should do it. And I think that there's nuggets of wisdom in there that I have followed. I'm like, ooh, that's an interesting idea. That's an interesting approach. I never would have thought about that. Oh, that's how you do that, right? And so I think that there's a both and here. I think it is good to follow people that you went before you. And also, I will tell you, Pete, that I have made not so great business decisions by doing things that other entrepreneurial coaches say I should do. Like, for instance, like, oh, you should offer this type of product, or you should offer this type of service, because it was making that person money. And I'm like, okay, well, I think it could be okay. It could be fun. I'll try it. And you know what? It didn't work. And I think that that's also part of being an entrepreneur and even a leader is you try things. But I think I was also quick enough to say, you know what, that might have worked for them, but this doesn't work for me. I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad I went out into the world. I'm glad I did it. But that's why it's also so discerning to say, I see, in fact, let me give you a really clear-cut example. I coach a lot of leaders in corporate, and a lot of leaders are working up the ranks, and they might get promoted into a new position. And it can be really tempting for them to almost kind of copy the style of the leader before them, especially if that leader was successful, likable. In fact, a lot of times on our first conversation, they're like, well, I feel like I need to develop X, Y, and Z skill because the leader before me did that and they were really likable. And so it can be tempting to just go in and kind of do what the previous leader did, but that can also cause a real crisis of confidence because you never show up authentically you. And so instead, one of the things that we're working on in the beginning is, no, what are your values? What are your unique leadership tendencies and approaches and skills? And how can you use that so you can show up and feel more aligned with yourself every day? Instead of constantly thinking to yourself, well, what would Pete have done here? Or what do I need to do here? How to be more like that other person? And so it can be really sneaky how sometimes, we can kind of just tend to copy what went before us instead of asking ourselves, what am I meant to do? How am I meant to think about this? What still small voice do I have that I need to listen to? What ideas do I need to bring forth that the world needs?
And oftentimes in a leadership situation, the predecessor had a different context, business maturity, situation, and something new is absolutely needed. It's like, well, hey, back in the day, we were growing like crazy and we had to do X, Y, Z. Well, now we are in a steady state situation, and we would actually do well to iron out some details associated with systems and processes and compliance and very grown-up-y organizational matters, which were kind of superfluous in the early days when there wasn't a whole lot to systematize or operationalize in those ways.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, I often say that the pedestal problem leaves status quos unchanged. They leave products undeveloped. They leave ideas unshared because, lots of times we just go along to get along and think the people above us know best. And so we silence all these little innovative things that can make our work and our world a better place.
Yeah. And I think your book is called Closing the Confidence Gap. And we love talking about confidence and boosting confidence here is a common thing folks want more of. And I think what's interesting in terms of, as I've made the mistake a number of times if someone says something really confidently and it goes against my own intuitions, I go, well, I don't really know, but wow, that guy seems utterly convicted that this is going to be the case. So I almost feel like confidence alone makes me believe I should not totally discount what they're saying. But sometimes that is the right answer, is to totally ignore that thing. I'm thinking about what comes to mind for me, I don't know why, is Mark Zuckerberg back in the day when they renamed Facebook to Meta. And he said that we're all going to be interacting in the metaverse and having these headsets strapped. And I was like, boy, that sounds so wrong to me. Second Life has been around for a while. That's kind of sort of died out. People don't find big old headsets comfortable to have strapped on them. There's already been a backlash associated with, social media and its problems. But hey, man, you're Mark Zuckerberg and you would know the industry and you probably have some insight but no, sure enough, the metaverse did not come to pass as he predicted. And you could say the same for humanoid robots, self-driving cars, AI. People are so darn confident about how the future is going to unfold. It's like, well, I guess you would know. But I think I'm finally starting to wise up and say, no one really can predict the future. You've got a guess, and you've got a lot of money riding on that guess working out the way you say it will.
Yeah, there was actually research, and I can't find the source, but the person who shared it was Adam Grant. So you can backtrack it that way for our listeners. But they said that there was a study done that people actually believe people who appear to be confident, even though they are not competent. And so then we end up blindly following
Guilty.
everybody from people on the political stage to friends in our lives who are very convincing to tell us to do things to even the people at work. And so I think that's where a shift really has to happen in corporate America, because one of the things I talk about in the TEDx talk is that there are leaders who appear very confident. And so what we do is we blindly follow them. And sometimes we put them on a pedestal. But what can happen is those leaders can turn into brilliant jerks who never get good feedback. People are too scared to share ideas or feedback or insights with them. So those leaders are going along thinking everything's working when it's not. And lots of times that is the recipe for the corporate scandals that we see that shatter organizations. Uber is a great example of, their first leader, Travis. Like, people were too scared to share feedback with him because he was so confident and people just went along, right? But it caused a lot of problems in the system. And so, the pedestal problem isn't just bad for our own confidence, right? Because we're silencing our own ideas and intuitions to go along to get along. But it's bad for leaders too who are pedestaled because they don't get the feedback that they need to make changes, right? To humble themselves, to make sure that they're staying curious and connected to the teams that they lead.
Well, and I think this gets to just a fundamental tension associated with how do we properly evaluate our opinion relative to other people's opinions. And this brings me back to what a weirdly stressful time for me was. We had to get a roof repair situation. And so I knew that it was hard to get a hold of folks to do anything on my house from experience. And so I said, I'm just going to call 12 roofing companies and see how many people show up. Sure enough, we had about 5. So not a bad ratio in my experience. But then they're all conflicting information. Some people said they got to tear off the whole roof. It's like, no, you can just put another layer on. It's just fine. And it was so tricky for me. It's like, man, I was hoping to get the expert opinion on my roof, but you're the experts and you're contradicting each other. And somehow I, who is not a roof expert, need to make the call. You are the correct roof expert. You are the incorrect roof expert. What an uncomfortable spot to be in. And I think it really, in terms of senior leaders of all stripes, if they have healthy teams where they air disagreeing viewpoints, I mean, this is their daily existence. So how do we play that game, thinking about who's right, who's wrong, and me versus them and them versus the other party? It could be a pretty tricky, exhausting mental process of sorting through that.
And it can cause a lot of anxiety too. So let's just look at it from both sides. Let's look at it from the individual's point of view. Maybe you're trying to make a decision. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you have a habit of reading the entire internet, pulling all of your friends, putting it all in a pros cons Excel spreadsheet, right? And you have all of this data. And I think at some point, and we've gone through that roofing issue too, so I giggled a little bit. At some point, it's like I have all the data points. And now, based on all of the data points that I have, what do I believe is the right decision to go with? Because at some point, you're going to have enough data. If you keep trying to gather data, well, then you're in analysis paralysis and you're just spinning your wheels. And so as individual, even myself running a business or choosing a roof, it was, what are all the data points we've collected? Where do things seem to err? And then also, what do I know about this issue? What do my values say about this issue? Is there a decision that moves forward in alignment with, where I want to go and that honors, my skills and talents, et cetera, at work? And so, I think from the individual's perspective, there has to be an enough point of like, this is the data. Now I got to go check in with myself. What aligns? Okay, I move forward. When it comes to the leadership point of view, in terms of them getting a lot of feedback, right, about all the things that they should do, I think it's helpful, especially it was helpful for me as a leader, to actually get in on the ground with people because it helps you actually see things from their eyes, participate and see what they're seeing. But I think the same rules apply is I'm going to get a lot of data from my teams. How can I get in on the ground and verify that data and not just take all of that at face value, but then make the leadership decision that I think moves us forward in the direction that we're meant to go?
I like that a lot. Getting on the ground and verifying. So we're going a layer deeper in terms of, so one, let's kill with the roof thing still. It's like one person says, oh, another layer's fine. Another person says, oh, you got to tear it all off. And it's sort of just asking those questions that gets the confidence as well. It's like, who am I to defy or question the great roof master? But to ask those questions, like, how do you make that determination? Can you show me what you're seeing that leads you to say this? And that can tell you something right there in terms of like, look, we know roofs. We've been doing this for 30 years. Like, okay, that's not actually an answer. As opposed to, well, we'll take a look at this. According to Chicago building codes, the depth is blah, 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 blah. And just measure this right now. Okay, there you go. That's something real.
I love the phrase, can you show me what you're seeing? Because one of the things that I think really makes good leaders, and a lot of people are like, well, what's the difference between confidence and cockiness? Well, I think that cockiness is confidence without any curiosity. And so when you're saying, can you show me what you're seeing? Like that in itself is just using curiosity, right? It's getting up there with the roofer and saying, here, see, look at your layers. Look how this is parsing apart. In my own personal example, I remember going through a merger and I was leading training teams in a bank and the banks had merged together. And so I was leading the combined training team. And I was maybe putting myself on a pedestal a little bit and saying, well, since we are the acquiring bank, certainly our ways are probably the ways we should do things. And I had one of the recently acquired teams trying to give me some feedback and some ideas. And finally, bless her heart, she goes, you know what? Why don't you come out to our location and just observe some of these things in action? And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. Well, can I see what you're seeing? When I got my feet on the ground, I was like, oh, they do that better than us. Oh, that went better than how we do it, right? And so it's like by humbling yourself and getting curious as a leader, not only do you pull yourself off the pedestal, but it really invokes that curiosity that builds genuine confidence. And like you said, when I see what you're seeing, now I have better data. Now I can get in and make the right decisions for everyone.
I like that a lot in terms of humble yourself, not in a way like, oh, I'm just a lowly whatever, I don't know anything, but rather humble yourself in a position of, yes, I do have something to learn here. And so let's go ahead and see what can be learned.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okie dokie. Well, so are there any particular questions you suggest we dig into as we navigate this stuff?
Yes. So if you listen to the talk, my talk might be a little different than other talks out there in that some talks give you advice. But I joke in my TED talk that my talk, I don't want to give you advice because I didn't want you to take the advice I would give you and put it on a pedestal thinking that I know better than you do about how to be a clear, confident leader. So instead, I leave the watcher or the listener with 3 questions. And we've kind of gone through these questions already. So let's just say you are getting some well-meaning advice. Let's just say there is somebody that's saying, this is the way that we should do things. Like question number 1 is it's all about reconnection. All of these questions are about reconnection. So question number 1 is to reconnect with yourself. Does this advice, do these values, does this thing align with my values and who I am meant to become? Does it align with these things that I'm working towards? Question number 2 is really about the pedestal problem is not like, I'm one up or you're one up. It's like, how are we coming together to the table as equals? That's the big thing. How are we coming together to the table as equals? And so when I can own the unique talents that only I can bring to a situation, it helps me come together to the table as an equal because I can see the talents in someone else without compare and despair. And so that is the second question to kind of, come back and reconnect as equals is what is the unique perspective that only I can bring to this situation? Yeah, the leaders might be really confident about knowing about this strategy thing, but you know what? Maybe I'm the only person that talks to the customer. So how can I bring that perspective? And then the last question I really encourage folks to think about is like, what am I meant to create in the world? So like when I'm 80 and in my dream retirement, what is this thing that I've created? And how can I use my skills and my talents to contribute to what I am meant to create in the world? So just to recap, 3 questions for reconnection at a more helpful level is, does this align with my best skills and talents? What is that unique perspective that only I can bring to this conversation so I can come to the table as an equal? And then what am I meant to create in the world? Because at the end of the day, somebody is waiting on that unique thing that only you can bring to the world. So how are you going to put it into the world?
Okay. Well, I'd love some more stories and examples of putting this into practice. We've heard about roofs and mergers and Mark Zuckerberg. Can you tell us about some clients who were doing some of this idolizing, some of this pedestalizing, and what they were doing and how they made a shift and what resulted on the other side?
Yeah. Okay. So just at a basic level, here's something I hear a lot with my clients. And I'll use a very personal example of me. Well, because I don't want people to think that I have got this figured out. Like I talk about it because I have the problem. So a lot of my clients, when they come to coaching, they will say, Kelli, I'm struggling with this project, this, that, and the other thing. And here's what really needs to be fixed. And I'm like, okay, well, so what happened when you told your leaders that this is actually the root cause and it needs to be fixed? Well, I haven't told them because you know what? I mean, they are just so certain that this is what we have to do, or this is the deadline that we have to meet. And so it's kind of like putting that leader on a pedestal. And so then my client is withholding really valuable information, either about the system or a root cause or a client that they feel scared. And so one of the things then we're working on in coaching is how do you go in and advocate to your leader respectfully, saying, hey, I know that this is what you want to do and this is the deadline you're on, but I have really valuable information after I've gotten in and I've worked with the thing. And I think we actually need to zig instead of zag. And so I see that happen a lot where it's like, hey, you need to pull your leader and all their confidence off a pedestal because you have real information. The other way I see it too is, when people are accelerating their career and they get a lot of well-meaning advice about what next career step they should take. So I have a client who would have a leader come to her and say, hey, we want to put you in this role. I think you'd be great in this role. And while that feels really flattering, my client was just like, I don't think I want that. I mean, I think that they want to put me there and maybe the title would be really cool and the salary, but they're like, I think I would hate the work, but I don't know if I can say no because this is the CFO or blah, 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 blah. And so then we're working then a lot on, well, what do you want in your career? What do you want your next step to be? Instead of just defaulting to their advice, like, what skills and talents do you think you need to bring? And so then we're working on how do I craft that conversation with my leader about what I want to bring to the workplace and where I think I might be a good fit. And, I will just say that the last thing, and going back, let's circle this back around with AI, is I'll use my own personal example, is earlier in the year, I was working on a book. I obviously run my own leadership coaching and speaking practice. It mostly focuses on helping women advance to the rooms where decisions are made. And with the ushering in of the new administration, DEI is not as popular as it used to be. And while I don't specifically work on DEI, a lot of women's leadership budgets are just in that DEI lump of money. Okay. And a lot of companies removed that section of money. So that impacted my business. So I did what a lot of people did. And I went out to ChatGPT and said, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's what my mission. Here's what I'm focusing on. Here's the current political and sociocultural environment, blah, 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 blah. What ideas do you have? And you know what, Pete? It gave me some really good ideas. And I'm like, well, that's genius. Of course, why didn't I think of that, right? I could tweak this here. And so I started to do that. I started to really focus on a section of my content called Advance from Doer to Leader. It was a chapter of my book, my code of closing the confidence gap, lead more by doing less. I had fun. It was a little more gender agnostic, but you know what? I started to get kind of burnt out. And one of the things I realized is I took ChatGPT's advice without stopping and checking in and saying, wait, do I even want this? I never even thought to ask it, well, what would happen if I just stayed the course? And through a lot of burnout, I started to realize that I had put AI on a pedestal. And I then made the shift at the end of last year to just say, you know what? Yes, that stuff is fun and cool and I'll still do it, but I've lost focus of what my core mission is. And I need to go back and reinvigorate that. And so at the end of last year, I created a brand new program for women leaders in corporate America called the Clarity and Confidence Collective. And ever since I've kind of reshifted just 1 degree, I feel so much better. Because I'm following what I am meant to create in the world and not what AI said I should do in response to a trend that happened. So
that's super. And I think that is a bit of context that tends to be missing, as you mentioned earlier, in just about every piece of advice, is we're hearing not so much, this would be perfect for you, so much as, well, this is a thing that worked for me. And so it's like, well, okay, that's good input, maybe, but it's certainly not the end of the story. Mm-hmm. Lovely. Well, I'd also love your perspective when it comes to, I think sometimes when we are putting others on a pedestal or we're idolizing them, we're kind of undervaluing our own strengths. And that's the funny thing about strengths is, well, they're strengths. So we do a thing and it's easy. And then it seems like, well, it's no big deal. It was easy. Well, it's no big deal. It was easy because it's a strength for you, but it's not the case for other people. So I think this is a trap it's easy to fall into. Do you have any pro tips on how to not fall into that trap?
Yeah. In fact, one of the main pieces of things I talk about with my clients is that one way to pull someone off the pedestal is to stop overestimating others' intelligence and underestimating your own. And that is the tricky thing about our unique talents, our genius zone, whatever you want to call it, is it's easy for us. Like we can do it in our sleep. We think it's not a big deal. And so that is one of the assignments I usually give my clients is we have to remember that these things that come easy for us are usually really hard for other people. So for example, like I kind of grew up in the corporate training route. If somebody says, I need to teach somebody something, I can pull together a day-long training course in a few hours, like, and other people are like, oh my gosh. So I always had to remember exactly, like even in my own corporate leadership, when I was like sitting at the table with executives and they would be talking about things and half I didn't know about, or I was pretending like I knew what it was about, or, really intimidated to share, I would always have to come back and remember, but wait a minute, these folks are not experts on training. They're not experts on communicating change management to people. They're not experts on just how people react to certain things, the human behavior side of all of it. And so if I am the person that leaves those things unsaid at that executive meeting, then other people are going to suffer. Other people are not going to, enjoy this experience as much as they should. And so I think one of the things that helped me was, number one, not only identifying what is my genius zone, what is that thing that only I can bring to the conversation, but who else will this benefit? And I think sometimes when we start to recognize that in our speaking up and advocacy, we're also doing it on behalf of someone else, at least for me, it makes it feel a little bit easier that this isn't just about me, as I'm meant to use some of these skills and talents for the benefit of other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. Well, Kelli, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things?
Yeah, go out and check my TED Talk. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. The other thing, like I said, I'm really excited about is the Clarity and Confidence Collective. It is a community for corporate women leaders who never want to lead alone.
Big thanks to Kelli for sharing her wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsored checkout is Monarch. I don't enjoy thinking about or fiddling with money, so I love resources that make this quicker and easier. Set yourself up for financial success this year. Monarch is a gorgeous personal finance tool that makes your money life easier. It brings your whole money picture from budgets to accounts and transactions and investments into one super handy dashboard on your phone or laptop. I was such a fan of the old Mint.com and was super bummed when it disappeared. But the good news is that Monarch was founded by a team that includes the original product manager of Mint, and I dare say it's even better. I like the graphical summaries that help me drill down into things quickly and easily, and helps me get to the bottom of anything that just seems off or weird, or helps me zero in on great opportunities for savings faster. In fact, Monarch helped the average user save over $200 per month after joining. So set yourself up for financial success in 2026 with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes proactive money management simple all year long. Use code AWESOME at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code AWESOME. One sponsor to check out is Factor. If you find yourself with big goals and no time to cook, Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs. And I mean fully prepared. They're fresh, not frozen, and you microwave them so you have a tasty hot meal raring to go within 2 minutes. They've got whole food ingredients with lean proteins and colorful veggies. There's 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh. I personally prefer the high protein option. I can recall 3 times in life when I realized, work is about to get wildly busy. Better get that Factor subscription going again. And it was such relief to know that in the midst of a demanding, stressful season, I had a fridge full of 6+ delicious meals ready to go at a moment's notice. So head over to factormeals.com/beawesome50off and use code beawesome50off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. Do note, this is for new subscribers only. It varies by plan. That's 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while the subscription is active. All right. Well, now could you share your favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
It's an RBG quote. It's fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that others will join you.
And a favorite study, experiment, or bit of research?
I really love the one that I quoted earlier that came, I know Adam Grant cited it, where he just said, we tend to follow people who just appear to be confident. And I think that this is really fascinating for me right now because of what's playing out on the political stages a little bit. Even with some of the technology leaders in the world right now that are leading, you gave Zuck as an example, or AI. I mean, I think a lot of people are really listening to the confident voices right now, but they may not always be right.
And a favorite book?
My favorite book that I have read recently is Know My Name by Chanel Miller.
And a favorite tool?
I'm teaching myself to play the piano. So my favorite tool is free YouTube videos on how to play the piano.
Oh, all right. And a favorite habit?
Working out. I work out every morning. Have to. It makes me fit for human consumption.
And a key nugget you share that folks really dig and quote back often to you?
Success loves clarity.
All right. And folks want to learn more, get in touch. Where'd you point them?
You can come to my website, kellyraythompson.com. I'm Kelli with an I. Otherwise, I mostly hang out on LinkedIn, and you can find me at /Kelli Ray Thompson.
And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Yeah, my final call to action for you is I want you to stop this week and notice where you might be polling someone else for an opinion or data, or maybe Googling or asking ChatGPT for what you should do. And I want you just to stop. And I want you to ask yourself, what is mine to do?
All right. Kelli, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate Kelli's simple reminder to stop overestimating others' intelligence and underestimating your own. And I know there's a subset of people who have maybe the opposite problem. But I think the awesomely cool, humble, beautiful listeners that you are more likely to fall into this trap. And I've done it myself. Someone says, oh, hey, Pete, so-and-so wants some advice on a matter, and I thought you'd be great. So I'm putting you in touch. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I have anything really to say. Maybe a little bit. I'm no expert on the matter. And so then we get to chatting and I say, I recommend, you might check out this and then this and then this. And then there's this book and then there's this tool. And I might want to put you in touch with this person. Also, keep in mind this, watch out for that. And so I'm going. And then they say, okay, well, we have a good back and forth, a good rich exchange. And then about 30 minutes in, they say, well, I want to be respectful of your time. And I'm thinking, I'm not even done yet. I got much more to share. And then I leave the call thinking, I guess I did have some good stuff to share after all. Who would have thunk it? Because often we underestimate our strengths. The stuff that seems just quote unquote obvious to us because we've been in it for so long are not at all obvious to others who have less experience and exposure to these matters. So great reminder from Kelli to properly evaluate yourself. Don't sell yourself short, and enjoy the opportunities that can come with that. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1131. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.